morning and welcome back to the lecture series on refugee migration diaspora. So, we are doing a case study and today we will historicize Bangladeshi diaspora through our reading of Monica Ali's novel Brick Lane. So, Brick Lane is written by the Bangladeshi immigrant author Monica Ali. It is the first English novel that is written by this Bangladeshi immigrant writer. The novel was first published in the year 2003. The title of the novel was suggested by the Doubleday publishers. So, Monica Ali's Brick Lane, which came out in 2003, was envisioned even prior to the publication of the novel. This is because the author had already received a sizable advance for writing this novel. So the concept of the novel had already been, conceived in the mind of Monica Ali before it was penned down. The novel was on the bestseller lists for almost a year. The hardcover of Brick Lane sold 150,000 copies, and it was also nominated for all the major literary prizes. So, this is considered as a major work by Monica Ali, and this is Brick Lane is almost synonymous with her career as an author. So, the novel Brick Lane has vivid descriptions of the actual brick lane that we have in London, and these descriptions outraged a lot of people who in reality reside in that area. So, one sees that as a result of this book coming out, the residents of Brick Lane were provoked in part by the success of this novel. A group of people presented themselves as residents of the neighborhoods around the real Brick Lane, which is a high street populated by Bangladeshi population in the East End of London. These residents of Brick Lane staged protests and they wrote letters condemning and criticizing the novel by Monica Ali, and they declared anger at Ali's depiction of the area, the way Ali has depicted the area, at her tenuous connection to this area. And later they were also apprehensive at the prospect that their ward, this entire lane, the Brick Lane as it is called, might be used for shooting the 2007 book to a motion picture. So, they did not want the kind of depiction that one finds of the Brick Lane in Monica Ali's novel. So, Monica Ali is the daughter of a Bangladeshi father and a British mother. So, she has her mixed roots. She has her hybrid identity as a half British and a half Bangladeshi. She was originally born in Dhaka and then later migrated to England at the age of 3. She was brought up in Bolton, which is in Greater Manchester, which is a middle class neighborhood in London. And then she herself married a white management consultant. So we see that she's a mixed breed, part British, part Bangladeshi, and then she herself marries a white man. So one can consider her as an excellent example of a hybrid diasporic subject given her biographical background. Further, she is also considered as an outsider who is depicting the Bangladeshi diaspora in London. Her depiction, her understanding of the Bangladeshi diaspora is in the capacity of someone who is outside of the social fold. This is because she is a second generation Bangladeshi writer who does not know Bengali, which happens to be the language of her ancestors if we trace through her paternal lineage. So, through her paternal lineage, Bangladeshi origin and Bangladeshi identity can be traced. However, she doesn't know how to read and write Bengali, which essentially makes her someone outside of the Bangladeshi diasporic fold. She has also never lived in Brick Lane, which is the novel's central location. So, a lot of residents from the Brick Lane would naturally claim that her depiction of the locality is somewhat diluted, somewhat besides the reality, and they consider the writer as someone who does not really belong to the core group of Bangladeshis, and her depiction might be, fraught with biases. So, Monica Ali's class background and racial profile were quite distant from Bangladeshi immigrants. Like I was saying, she is depicting human subjects or a section of the London society that she does not know too well. So, Sarah Brulitt states that Monica Ali has relied on her own distant and somewhat displaced memory of Bangladesh and Bangladeshi immigrants in England that she accessed second hand through her books and her father's stories. So there is this question of romanticizing and even diluting the Bangladeshi culture through her writing, because people would claim, the Bangladeshi population would claim, that she is trying to work on a section of society that she does not know very well. Moreover, one sees that in the process of creation of the character of Nazneen, who is the female protagonist in her novel Brick Lane, Monica Ali acknowledges her indebtedness, her debt to one book titled The Power to Choose by Naila Kabir. And this book, The Power to Choose by Kabir, came out in 2000. So she greatly draws on Kabir's work in the shaping of her characters, especially her protagonist Nazneen. Now, The Power to Choose by Kabir is an extensive ethnographic work on Bangladeshi women who have worked as garment workers in London and Dhaka. So, all these information explains to the reader that Monica Ali is accessing, knowledge or concept about the Bangladeshi diaspora somewhat second hand, somewhat displaced from their core culture. She is writing on the Bangladeshis in London through reading other books, through data that is available second hand, and it proves that her cultural location is therefore different from the standard or typical Bangladeshi diasporic identity. This is something that critic and scholar Himadri Lahiri also has to point out. So, Brick Lane by Monica Ali begins in a village called Gauripur. So, Gauripur is the small village in rural Bangladesh. We have the character named Roopban, who gives birth to her eldest daughter Nazneen, who happens to be the central character and the female protagonist in Brick Lane. Nazneen is born a premature baby, and so other characters, including the village midwife Vanessa, think that Nazneen is born a dead child until after some time she begins screaming in a weak voice, right? So, as a baby, Nazneen is fragile, she is vulnerable because she is a premature born baby. Now, the baby requires medical attention. However, her mother leaves the daughter to her fate. To the great surprise of her friends and family, including her father Hamid, Nazneen, however, does not die. She survives, she continues to survive. Another central character in this novel is Nazneen's sister Hasina, who is born as a fiery and beautiful woman. She is by nature a very rebellious character, and at the age of 16, Hasina elopes with a local boy, which disappoints the father a lot. So, her father Hamid was prepared even to chop his daughter's head off should she return, because her act of elopement, her act of running away from family without father's consent, seemed to have maligned the family's reputation. So, coming from an orthodox, rural Muslim family, she would be killed if her father found her. So, Hasina, we see, does not return, and Hamid, her father, becomes a widower after Rukban's apparently accidental fall onto a sharp spear, right? So the mother of Hasina and Nazneen accidentally dies, and Hamid becomes a widower. And then what happens is that Hamid arranges for Nazneen to marry a 40-year-old man whose name is Chanu and who lives in London. This is how, getting married to a much older man that her father arranges for her, this is how Nazneen ultimately lands up in London. So this is where, after getting married to Chanu, Nazneen's story begins. Her narrative begins in a different land that is distant from her home. The novel Brick Lane was first titled by Monica Ali as Seven Seas and 13 Rivers. The Bengali translation of it would be Shat Samudro Tero Nodir Pare, which metaphorically reflects the distance between the homeland and the hostland. It's not the literal, seven seas and 13 rivers lying between Bangladesh and London, but it is a way of, saying, as it is commonly, it's a common expression used in Bengali language to reflect the distance from home. So it's far, far away from Bangladesh. It's a way of saying that, it's a land that is far, far away from the homeland. There are seven seas and 13 rivers in between. So the title might have been taken from one of the phrases that Nazneen's sister Hasina mentions in one of her letters. So these letters become very important documents that tell us about a female Bangladeshi's experience in, outside of her home, and it also shapes Nazneen's femininity, Nazneen's understanding of the world. That's because her sister has taken a very adventurous step by leaving home without the knowledge, without the consent of her father. So when she reads letters from such a sister, Nazneen understands the world through the lens of Hasina. Now, Brick Lane is a high street in the East End of London, as I said, which is populated by Bangladeshi immigrants. Sukhdev Sandhu, in an article which is titled Come Hungry, Leave Edgy, it was published by the London Review of Books, traces the historical reference to the place Brick Lane, which acts as a point of reference, which acts as a primary point of reference to the reading of Monica Ali's novel. So, Sukhdev Sandhu is basically historicizing Brick Lane, reading the history of this place, this locality in London. Historically, we see that Brick Lane was a part of a Roman burial ground. It's considered, as an unclean extremity lying beyond the walls of the city of London. It's not even at the heart of the London. It's not considered as the core culture of London. Before the Bangladeshi immigrants came to the Brick Lane, many Irish workers, many Huguenot refugees, and then silk workers and East European Jews had settled in this area. All these ethnic groups had a common experience, and the common experience was that of receiving hostility from the native population in London. They were marginalized social groups, marginalized human subjects who chose the Brick Lane for their home, for making homes, in this locality. They chose Brick Lane where they made their homes. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, Bengali Laskars, primarily who were sailors from the Sylhet area, began to settle in the Brick Lane. Their presence gradually transformed this area into a hub, into a ghetto for London's Bengali population, with many residents finding work as cooks, waiters, and mechanics. So both Sukhdev Sandhu, Sukhdev Sandhu and Sarah Brulitt observed that Brick Lane was a place that was being gentrified gradually with time. So when we talk of gentrification, we refer to the process of changing in the character of a neighborhood through the influx of more affluent residents and the way they start investing in that locality, which kind of changes the nature, the basic characteristic, or the culture of that locality. According to Sarah Brulitt, I quote, in 1964, sociologist Ruth Glass used gentrification to describe what occurred when middle class home buyers, landlords, and professional developers moved into parts of London that had dilapidated houses, that had dilapidated housing stock and blighted streets. I quote, in 1964, sociologist Ruth Glass used gentrification, the term gentrification, to describe what occurred when middle class home buyers, landlords, and professional developers moved into parts of London that had dilapidated housing stock and blighted streets. Attracted to historic building features undervalued by existing residents, the newcomers' mere presence and marked refurbishment efforts were often coextensive with the transformation of rented homes into owner occupied ones, as well as with dramatic increases in housing costs and displacement of the working class. Unquote. So, this is what gentrification comprises, basically a refurbishment effort where the residents change, their social positions are different, they have access to more resources, they have greater social mobility, sociocultural mobility, or socioeconomic mobility rather. And so eventually the old houses are renovated and the housing costs appreciate, and there is an eventual displacement of the working class residents. Further, Sandhu observes that by the year 1970, Brick Lane and many of the streets around this locality had become predominantly Bengali in terms of culture, in terms of the common practices prevalent in this area. Jewish bakeries had been turned into curry houses, jewelry shops into sari stores, and synagogues were turned into dress factories. In 1976, the synagogue on the corner of Fournier Street and Brick Lane, which was formerly a church and then a Methodist chapel, went on to become a Jama Masjid or a mosque. However, it was still a bleak, rundown area which was so blighted. Now, placed against this historical background of the street of Brick Lane, Monica Ali has built a narrative of a Bangladeshi immigrant woman named Nazneen, as well as her family. So, after her marriage with Chanu, Nazneen comes to London. Monica Ali vividly portrays the Bangladeshi diaspora community in the UK and their struggles in acculturating in an unfamiliar environment. In the context of the diasporas, it is a common observation that once a person is removed from her homeland, the diasporas are forever burdened with a sense of displacement because their homelands become a place that is always longed for. It becomes kind of a utopia that one can never, arrive at, or that one can never meet or see again. So, because the homeland is that idyllic place, it haunts a displaced person, a person in diaspora, and it is a beaconing light of everything that is supposed to be ideal and perfect, because the host land always seems to be an unfamiliar place to the diasporic population. Moreover, through the novel, there is an attempt made to reflect that often the homelands can also become foreign places for which there is no longer a desire to visit or return. So, in contrast to this idyllic notion of homeland, there are also situations where the migrant population can no longer relate to their home, the so called native land they have come from. The homeland or the native place becomes a foreign place, and there is hardly a desire to visit or return. This is more pertinent in the case of subsequent generations who are born and brought up in the foreign land, in the foreign culture. They have only heard of Bangladesh from their parents, from their grandparents, and there is no direct connect, there is no immediate connect or identification. For these subsequent generation, diaspora population, the host land, which seems to be so hostile and alien at the beginning, gradually goes on to become a place of permanent existence. So, this host land, which is initially supposed to be a hostile place and alien, gradually becomes a place of permanent existence. So, the second and third generation immigrant population can actually identify with the host land. In her work, New Heroines of the Diaspora, reading gendered identity in South Asian diasporic fiction, critic Lupa Banerjee notes that after coming to London and being estranged from her homeland in Bangladesh, Nazneen craves to return home during the initial years of her stay in Brick Lane. She really cannot adjust with the London's culture. She longs to go back. She yearns for her Bangladeshi life. She always grapples and struggles with the hope of going back to Bangladesh. She somehow manages to live in the suburbs of London. However, the omnipresence of foreignness and the necessity of grappling with its influence keeps haunting her in the host land. So, Nazneen is mostly confined to the domestic space, and she's shown as doing household chores and attending to her husband's and her children's needs. Her first child, who is a son, dies despite her best efforts to save him, and it is later accepted as an act of fate. Then two of her children, Sahana and Bibi, are born, and Nazneen takes up her new role as a mother. She faces the challenges that the role of a mother entails, and she now needs to face the demands of the second generation members, her children. So, the epigraph of the novel is also very important for tracing the migration and development of Nazneen's character. So, we see that Brick Lane opens with two epigraphs, one from Ivan Turgenev, the other from Heraclitus. So, from Heraclitus, it is quoted, "A man's character is his fate." And from Turgenev, sternly, remorselessly, fate guides each of us. So, Turgenev's extract emphasizes the role of fate in shaping a person's character. It is something, fate is something which is considered as the guiding light of all characters. The trajectory of Nazneen's story almost traces a movement from absolute surrender to the fate which is implied in Turgenev's extract. During her stay in Brick Lane, Nazneen's character develops and slowly distances herself from the clutches, from the exacting nature of patriarchy. She becomes steadily aware that she needs to be self reliant, and therefore she starts working in a garment factory which takes her away from the confines of home or domesticity. She also decides to learn the English language in order to connect to the outside world, make friends, and build a new world for herself. So, her first step towards becoming independent is befriending this character called Razia. So, her friendship with Razia is a step forward towards her independent life. She develops a female bond with Razia, which enables her to defy, question, and challenge patriarchal dominance that she has been facing since childhood and then from her husband after marriage. Another turning point in Nazneen's life is her entry into a relationship with a man named Karim. Through Karim, Nazneen gets the opportunity to work as a garment worker. Now, Karim is a second generation Bangladeshi British citizen who is also the leader of the Islamic group called Bengal Tigers. Although Nazneen ends up in an extramarital relationship with Karim, it in a way gives her a sense of freedom from the patriarchal domination that she had been facing in the past from her different relationships, especially her experience in her marriage with Chanu. And she, till a point, had accepted it as her fate. And then she met this man called Karim, who is instrumental in enabling her to achieve her freedom, her emancipation. So, Karim is instrumental in letting Nazneen experience her freedom. So, this also gives her opportunities to overcome the difficulties of a constricted sociocultural environment. She is able to move out of basically a naturally male centric domain that her home is. So Nazneen slowly comes in contact with the members of her community, and then she starts taking control of her children. She starts actively, confronting her role in the family as a mother. Her character develops in the process, it evolves, and finally she chooses to stay back in London with her two daughters, whereas we see that her husband Chanu accepts that he is a failed immigrant and that he must return to Bangladesh. The novel carries different ideas of home for different characters. So, Nazneen's idea of Bangladesh and Chanu's concept of home in Bangladesh are significantly different. Home for the male protagonist Chanu brings back memories of Bangladesh, which is associated with homely historical and cultural memories. These are the, the a male's way of reminiscing, or a male's way of remembering the homeland is something more standardized. His idea of Bangladesh is rooted in the idea of a home country. And that's the kind of memory which is, in a way, very close to collective memory or the national memory. Because the man's memory, the man's way of remembering the country is something that also, in a way comes very close to formal historiography or formal documentation about a country's past. So, Chanu's idea of home is similar to what Sudesh Mishra states as classically auto-centered, racially self-evident, and ideologically homogenized. So, this is very similar to the depiction of any country as we find in a formal history. The masculine memory and the formal history are not very far from one another. On the other hand, for Chanu's wife Nazneen, the word home signifies memories of a pastoral background presented spectacularly in the filmic version of the novel. So, when Nazneen remembers Bangladesh, it is through the pastoral background which we see very vividly portrayed in the filmic version of the novel. And she also remembers the pastoral culture from Bangladesh. However, she is at the same time acutely aware of the gender discrimination that is embedded, that is at the heart of this term home, when home is especially associated with Bangladesh. So it is not a very standardized memory. This is a feminine version of memory which the national memory may not subscribe to, or which the national memory may not even recognize, because a woman is always somewhere it is suggested and implied that she is a secondary citizen, and her memory does not matter to the history as much as the memory of a male protagonist matters. So we have an alternative mnemonic experience as far as Nazneen and her understanding of home is concerned. So towards the end of the novel, she is really comfortable in defining her home space within London. So London is where she identifies her home towards the end of the novel, when she finally decides to stay back in England with her daughters, and she no longer needs any male support, any male members' support, either from the family or even anybody outside her family. So she doesn't need any male to accompany or guide her. She finds herself sufficient to support herself and her two daughters in London, in England. She chooses to live in a space that ensures her agency, her agential position, rather than return to her place of origin. Despite her difficulties during her initial migration to England, the place ultimately becomes her own. She makes it her own. She is a first generation aspiring woman who does not discard her link with her ancestral family. Therefore, her association with her homeland is a strong sense of belonging. So, on the one hand, she connects with her ancestral family. On the other hand, she can very strongly identify with London's culture and the opportunities that the new land has to give her. Another reason for Nazneen staying back in London comes from the tragic story of her sister Hasina. So, here, as readers, we get to know that Hasina had eloped with a man called Malik, who is a neighbor from their village Gauripur. So, Hasina had left him after being a victim of domestic abuse and went on to marry another man called Mr. Chaudhary. So, Hasina worked in a garment company where she was fired for a rumored affair with a co-worker, and then afterwards she was brutally raped by her husband after Mr. Chaudhary discovers her betrayal. So, after two marriages, elopement, being fired from work, being abused twice by two husbands, Hasina was broke and depressed, and ultimately she resorts to prostitution and eventually marries another man called Ahmed. So, she has a series of experience in marriage with different men, and ultimately this third man, Ahmed, also deserts her. So, through Hasina's letters and by trying to envision her experiences, Nazneen constantly sees the picture of Bangladesh and all its social realities. These letters project the scenario of an unhomely home for women, and naturally Nazneen is apprehensive of the future of her daughters in Bangladesh, what they would do. It is likely, according to her, that they would have a similar fate to Hasina if they went back to Bangladesh. Hasina's, very quizzical, very checkered life with series of marriages, all failed, and then ultimately resorting to prostitution, being abandoned by society, violated multiple times. All these things build an apprehension in Nazneen that she should not take her daughters back to Bangladesh, because in that kind of a social reality, her daughters are likely to face similar fate as Hasina. So, for her daughters Shahana and Bibi, the second generation diasporic characters who are born and raised in London, the distinction between homeland and hostland is almost not discernible. For them, the hostland is the homeland. They have only heard of Bangladesh and never been there, which indicates a complete integration into the hostland. Their diasporic identities have transformed them a lot through following the process of acculturation and assimilation. In fact, Nazneen's daughter Shahana declares that if there is any attempt made to take her back to Bangladesh, she would run away from home. And this home that she mentions happens to be London. That's the only place she knows as her home. Uh, in the case of Karim, who is another important character in the novel, Bangladesh is a mythic place of desire. He considers England as his home, but towards the end of the novel, he remains confused about where his home is. And this is especially because of the rampant racist treatment that is meted out to the Muslim migrant population post the 9/11 attacks. So, this sense of floating in the host population, not becoming a core of the host population, haunts Muslim section of the society after they face attacks following the 9/11 episode. To conclude, one sees that Nazneen comes out as a migrant who successfully reaches that stage of migration which mediates the integration of migrants into the countries of settlement after passing through different phases of separation, anguish, and transition. She goes through a series of experiences which mark the growth and evolution and metamorphosis of her character. Through this character of Nazneen, Monica Ali has shown that in this new world, diasporas have not only changed, but they are perpetually being refashioned, reconstructed, deconstructed through new realities in changing circumstances. The diasporic population, instead of feeling permanently homeless and displaced and, living with a sense of vacuum, as is commonly understood, always living with a sense of being uprooted, alienated, and constantly longing for a desire to return to their homeland, could also be, alternately starting to accept a new culture. So, the feeling of alienation is not the only experience that the diasporic population faces. It could also start, accepting a new culture and new identities without necessarily discarding the values that they have come with, the values of the original culture that they come from, right? So, there is this integration, there is this imbibing of cultures, of values from different lands, and that's what constitutes the hybrid identity of the diasporic population. So, with this, we come to the end of our lecture today. Let's meet with a new topic in our next lecture. Thank you.